Just okay, let me know if you can see the screen because sometimes it's too small. Is that okay? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we could see your screen. You're on the right.
Yes.
Cool. This session actually, I would say, complements this session, the previous two sessions that you guys just had. One with Avinash just now, and the previous before with the product group. It's about what I try to capture here. It's just not about talking about the tools, but my experience of running like many enterprise projects and like what I would recommend you to do from a people, technology, process, and also from a tooling perspective. That's what this session is about. If there are any questions, please just ask the questions during the session. I'm not sure if Avanash is still on the call, but if he's still on the call, Avanash, I'm more than happy for you to stay and answer some questions if you wish to. Oh, all good.
Thanks, mate. No worries. Cheers.
So let's talk about some of the challenges. I'm sure we all have seen those challenges being discussed in the previous sessions, and we've all seen the news and everything. A lot of things happening in the industry, especially with OpenAI coming on board recently, and a lot of blurring lines between business and personal activity, and all of that has been creating a lot of complexity. That things that we never seen before, right? A lot of new activities are happening. The other issue we see is some of these results in company and organizations not owning the solution or the device or the data, and then with that, so many devices, groups, data. It's really hard to keep up with that and the specification of the today's threats. So it's really challenge for security to deal with this. So if we look at the number of infrastructure and applications, they all leverage a lot of diversity when it comes to environments. Let just think like this: we have at least three major clouds: AWS, Google, Microsoft. Not counting Oracle, Alibaba, IBM, plus on-prem, plus your own device, right? So it's a multitude of place where you can have your application deployed to. So it's a huge number of applications, diverse infrastructure. So this really brings a difficult in governing the security across so many services. So there is no such thing as a single pane of glass, which everyone dream about, where I can go to this place and I look for all this current environment and so diverse, and I can actually, from a single pane of glass, do everything. On the other point, I see more and more when I engage with customers that really need from people, process, and technology to be together. It's very rare when they actually align. So another point to consider here is the regulatory requirements. That's another point, because every country and every industry will have a different one. And there is no such thing as one size fits all. And if we look at then some of the statistics that I have in the next slide about the attackers, you see that more and more it's become even cheaper to do that. So you can see, in the bad neighborhoods, you can see like attacker for hire for $250 per job. Ransomware kits, $66, which is absolutely insane. That makes the life of a security even harder, because more and more people are playing with different tools, different ways of trying to hack or to steal data. Which is the most important thing nowadays is data, right? Is our health data, is our information about our identity, is information about our records. So this is very important. So with that, what I have drawn here next is what are some of the recommended practices so we can put in place in our customers or our organizations. First, let's start with the zero trust. I think that is something that everyone needs to understand. What actually is a zero trust? Because there is a lot of talk about zero trust, right? But that's set of principles that we really need to think about. How can we implement? It's making sure that we move from a assumption to explicit verification. And remember, when we move to the cloud, the first point is the identity. If your identity gets compromised, then there is no point. Everything else gets compromised. The other day, I was talking some friends and about some practices in the market about having dev tests and production and having three different tenants, for example, three different identities. And I was questioning this, saying, well, that is a practice that the reality is it leads to people use different identities but the same password. And then to make even worse, some people will even use that same password in the social media, in the bank account. And if you do a research, and if people are really true to themselves, they will actually answer that they do that. So, so then I question why this need, for example, of having dev test production tenants when people actually use the same password. Um, so more important than that, it's really that moving from assumption to verification, moving to policy enforcement. Instead of having a something auditing, enforce it, deny or grant or deploy if it doesn't exist. Make sure that you also consistency. That's one of the word, like a dream word for everyone many years ago when we have only on-prem was to have dev, test, and production with the same configuration. Well, guess what? We actually can do that in the cloud, but people still don't do that. So they have different controls and different configurations in dev from what is in the cloud, in production. That makes the life of the developer very hard. That also makes the life of the operations team very hard. And that becomes that blame between developers and operations and security, as if something is running dev and work just fine. Well, why is not working production? Even if everything is using automation. And that for me, it's something that I really keep pushing hard when I engage, is making sure your production environment, your dev environment, your testing environment, they all have the same configuration, they all have the same policy, they all have the same controls. It's a way to get from dev to prod, and from a developer, this is heaven, because he will know that if he cannot do something in dev, he won't be able to do in prod, and vice versa. That would be my recommendation. Making sure that you design with the assumption that every element in this system can be compromised, can be breached. So this is the purpose of designing with zero trust, is making sure that I have my all the layers, data, app, infrastructure, network, they all protected with that mind that it can be breached. I'm moving from slides. If there is any question, please ask, because I can't see the questions, okay? So based on what I just mentioned, what I have put here is two points. And as I see this is a desire, especially when talking to many of customers. The first one is from a security control identification measurement, I want to make sure that the existing posture that I have, uh, it's matched against the Microsoft policy. That I want to understand if Microsoft actually has a policies and controls in place that is looking after the services that I'm deploying. On top of that, what I also want, and because that will, go for regulatory compliance, for example, if you are on a health industry or telco or banking, um, and you have obligations to meet, I also want to make sure that my company's security controls are bounded to that and I meet to that. Then if I go on the other side, which is the security control governance, is now that I have identified those security controls, I want to make sure that I can strengthen it, and I can also make sure there is a continuous improvement. Simple to say, if we look the Azure updates, for example, you see that services are pretty much release new features almost every day. Just look at what's happening with AKS. It's amazing what's going on with that product. Every single day, there is new updates, new features. This is great. But from a security perspective, it means that, well, I need to make sure that I have a continuous security improvement to look, oh, there is a new feature on product or service A, B, C, D. I need to make sure that I am on top of that, and that is, if that feature has created any risk, of that feature is addressing something that I had a mitigation, which I don't need anymore, it is great. So you need to be making sure that you have that continuous, this is a loop. You can't just create a security control, implement a policy, and forget about it. Cloud evolves all the time. Also, very important way, and which I also recommend to customers, is create the security controls, define it beforehand, implement the security controls, have a process in place to approve and implement new security controls or new cloud services. This actually, if you go on this, which I call service enablement, it actually improves the velocity of the service that you can adopt. And also make sure that when you define the security controls, you need to make sure that you may have products that are non-Microsoft. So you need to make sure that whatever you're doing, that security controls, it needs to meet Microsoft and non-Microsoft products, or Microsoft and non-Microsoft cloud. Hey, so I mentioned before, right? So I see the essential cloud security. It's coming that people, process, and technology. This is very important. You can't have a cloud environment secure if people, process, technology doesn't work together. I I have another slide here that talks about, the let's call it the top 11 or top security best practice recommended ones. If we go, I'm not going to go through all of them because I'm not sure if I have time. But if we think about people, education, this is very important. You cannot assume that people have the knowledge about every single one of Azure services. I don't, and I doubt every one of us here would have 200 plus 50 services is too much. But we need to make sure that we have a way for whoever is working on that cloud team who is, enabling the services. They are educated, they have access to documentation, they have access to training, they have access to understand the security terminologies and technologies that are actually gonna help them enable those services. On top of that, then comes the process. It's making sure that we assign accountability for the cloud security process. For example, you have a new, you create a onboarding service or service enablement. As part of that, what I recommend you to have is make sure that you have a diverse team, and it's coming security, DevOps, it comes with architecture, it comes with people with identity knowledge, network knowledge. You need to have that sort of breadth in your cloud team, because that will help you make really great decisions and secure decisions, and not partial decisions or biased decisions. You also need to make sure that you have a incident response process in place, that you establish your cloud secure posture. We're going to talk a little bit about this. Make sure that we talk about, having 3 accounts, 3 passwords, move away from this, move to passwordless, make sure MFA is in place. Integrate, native firewall or NVAs, or make sure that firewall is in place. I mentioned before that identity is, the first point of attack, and it's now with cloud is very important, but having this network secure is also very important. And then below that, we have the foundational decisions, which is make sure to standardize on a single directory. I keep pushing for this because I see no point of having dev, test, and production, each one of those with different identities. It helps shadow IT people creating same password for the 3 ones, and that doesn't help at all security. Use identity-based access controls, move away from access keys. Make sure if you are a developer, when you're developing APIs, make sure you use a proper identity, use managed identities, use Active Directory or Enter ID identities, or B2C or B2B, whatever you need, but move away from using access keys. I see a lot of APIs out there, people just using keys and sharing those by emails. This is a rule breaker number 1. You just share your secret by mail. Email is not secure, or WhatsApp, or whatever message or whatever tool you use there. Don't share those secrets. And also, what I also say is single strategy, and actually this is the last slide that I have today is talking about that strategy. Why it's so important to have everyone talking about the same language. Think about, you're gonna have a team of architects from different backgrounds, different knowledge. If everyone have a different strategy, then you have a nightmare. I run a cloud strategy 2 weeks ago for a customer, and I think we were 24 people in the room. I asked them to put on a paper for me their understanding of the cloud maturity and strategy for the company. I got everyone with different answers. There were 14 questions about the cloud environments, strategy, and maturity. Only one answer had everyone in the same way, which was, what is your cloud solution? Other than this, everyone else had different views on what is the company strategy. So this is bad. So if we think about what I just mentioned from technology, and I mentioned before about the security controls, this is very important. Is you working with your customer or with your organization on defining this? Go through the domains, go through each one of those domains, the network security, identity management, data protection, incident response, logging, and define the controls that your company need. One thing I would say here, there is no one size fits all, but you can definitely use a baseline for that. And that's actually a great point to start, is going through one of the selected benchmarks that you have, or the CIS, or the Microsoft one, the PCI DSS, or ISO, whatever it is that your company needs to follow. Or if you don't want, I would recommend going through the Microsoft one, which is based on the CIS. It does have a baseline, and what you need to do is go through that baseline and understand which controls apply to your company, or each control it doesn't, and maybe some controls we need further tighten it, and then you can maybe combine or whatever it is, but it's great to have a baseline to start. Next, once you have defined the controls, I would say enforce the controls through policies. There is no point of having a control if you don't enforce that. Move away, my recommendation, move away from audit. Deny. Deny, because deny means if you are trying to deploy something and you cannot, then you're gonna get an error. If you have an audit, and I actually, it's very interesting. I was talking to a major company in Asia a while ago, and I asked them what was their way of implementing policies, and they said we do audit. We let everyone do whatever they want, and then we go through the compliance posture and we understand they are breaching. We send an email to them so they can fix. And I ask, okay, that is okay. Explain to me, do they fix? How long does it take them to fix? Oh, we send email every 3 months. After 6 months, they still don't do that, then we escalate that. And I say, okay, and after 6 months and after you did the escalation, does it fix the issue? They said no, because what the reply we got from the business is they already finished that project. They are on to the next project, and there is no budget to come back and fix that. So then what's the point of having audit? You just screw up everything. So move to deny or deploy if it doesn't exist. Because in this case, if someone tries, for example, to create a resource with a public IP and your company has a policy that says no Azure services should have public IP, if you have an auditor, the developer or whoever is deploying this will still be able to deploy with public IP. If you have deny, if the person tries to deploy a resource with public IP, he won't get it. He will just not be deployed. So that's what we want to achieve. If there is something that you must not do, it needs to be denied. It can't be audit, because audit means everyone will break the rule. And for you to fix that rule later will be absolutely a nightmare, and in some cases even impossible, because some systems will be in production and no one will take that service from production down for you to fix it. Maybe don't even have a budget, as I mentioned before. So there are some things that you need to do right at the start for you not to do twice. So moving to accountability, which is one of the top security practices, making sure that people have accountability. And that's very important, especially when we do everything through automation nowadays, is making sure that whatever your automation pipeline, for example, is touching security, that the security team, the security team is aware. If you have a pipeline that is touching network, that your network team is aware of what you're doing, that have the approvals, that they are accountable for that. And accountability does not mean that nothing can be automated, because sometimes you go work with some customers. I see that silo where you have the network team, you have the uh, security team, you have the identity team, and they are siloed, and they actually don't want people doing anything related to network. And then what happens is then you move to manual steps, where the first thing you do is you automate part of the process, but part of the other important part of the process is still manual, because some power broker wants to have their say in manually doing all the tasks. This is not accountability. Accountability is bringing them as part of the process and making sure they are actually part of the process and accountable for that. So you still can do automation, just make sure that you bring them on board. That's the reason why I mentioned before, people, process, technology, where everyone is on the same page. Okay, so now that we understand, we created our controls, we developed our policies, we starting deploy our services, then we need to move next, which is manage the security posture, which is a ongoing. And then for that, one of the tools, Microsoft Defender, which I'm gonna just share. Let's see if I can bring my screen here. Sorry, just 1 second. Let me share my other screen. Which is bringing Defender for Cloud. You'll see here that I have Defender for Cloud showing that I have on my ISO 2007-1, 2013 that I'm meeting everything but two. And it says, well, you don't have a security, your login monitoring is not established. You're not doing that. And if I go into the communications and security, it's a network security management is not there. So I'm missing security controls, right? So, hey, your storage, for example, access to my storage should be restricted. That's great. If I go, I actually do have a storage here that I deployed on purpose, which doesn't have anything. I just deployed it. You see that when I deploy the storage, which means with audit, no enforcement, I can deploy whatever I want. So there is nothing preventing me, for example, to deploy this policy, this storage with, for example, public IP. There is nothing preventing that. If I go here to the network, you see that public network access is actually enabled, which is not a good thing. We should definitely not have that, right? It should be private endpoint configured. But again, that is only audit policies. That's why make sure move to the line. So let's go back to this. So in Defender for Cloud, you'll be able not only to manage your security, but also to look at remediations. And that screen that I was showing about, it was showing what I was missing and how to remediate that. So make sure, and I put here very clear here that this is working together. It's not just whoever is managing the solution needs to be part of the threat and team, the information technology, the compliance team, the business leaders, architects, security, audit team. You need to make sure that everyone comes on board of this. Now, the last few slides about the Microsoft technologies for cloud security, which brings to the equation what we just discussed about, what Avinash was just talking about, which is the Microsoft security benchmark, where I would have the sys controls on non-technical or technical that we talk about, Azure, ASB controls, and for cloud and non-cloud, and also for Microsoft and non-Microsoft. Then on top of this, now that I have my benchmark, is automation, right? Is making sure that I do everything through automation. That's very important, right? Automation is very important. It's making sure that people don't go to the portal and do things, but everything's for automation. Now, why policy enforcement is so important is that even though with automation, we don't want people to go and use the Azure portal to, change configuration or try to set up a service. Sometimes people do. So, but if I have a policy enforcing, doesn't matter if I deploy using a infrastructure as a code, or if I deploy, or if I go to the portal, or if I use any other methodology, it does not matter. The policy is still there enforcing. If I say that you cannot deploy Azure storage with a public IP, doesn't matter how you deploy. If you deploy by using infrastructure code, or if you go into the Azure portal, or if you use Power BI, actually it doesn't matter how you actually do that. The policy is still there and is still enforcing. You cannot. So that's the beauty of using policies to enforce. It's because you are dealing with the problem at the start. You're not trying to fix it later. You're fixing it before. Remember, zero trust. we assume breach. We assume that things will happen, so we need to make sure that we deal with that. Once we deployed, then it comes to the solution that I can check the compliance, and that's what Defender for Cloud is all about, right? Is making sure that I can not only implement controls, but also that I can protect and understand what's going on in my cloud. Defender for Cloud is not just about seeing the policies. If we, I don't know if Avanash shared that, but I'll go through some slides here, then, oops, then I'll come back, right? What to implement here, make sure, again, establish your controls, catalog, analyze the different types of services that you have, and if you have different clouds or not, implement policies, and then make sure that this is an ongoing process, right? Services does change from time to time. You need to keep evaluating the policies to make sure that the policy that you developed yesterday is still valid tomorrow. And that holistic management of security is resource visibility, right? Making sure that I can see what is in there, security score, compliance, and data security. It's making sure that I can now connect
Hello,
Defender
Alex.
for
We
Cloud.
have 10 more minutes. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
We have,
Yeah, that's okay. I'm finished already. And then making sure that I can identify sensitive data that brings now to the merge between or connection between Defender and another product called Purview, which is making sure that I can identify my data and make sure that the data is secure. Is there any questions? I can't see any questions there. Is there any questions from anyone? No? Okay, good. I'm sure Avanash already. Sorry, go on.
Hi there. My name is Eugenia, and I have a quick question. So the one which you were sharing earlier in the PPT, which is related to the securing with zero trust concept. During that time, I just want to understand that when you were trying to explain about how in the zero trust environment we are planning to do it, will this be enforced? I know that it is enforced already in Office 365, even in Azure also it will be implemented, or is it already created? Just want to understand this concept, zero trust environment.
Cool. So it's a concept. You just said exactly what is a concept. You need to build it, right? You need to make sure that you implement this concept on your environment, and be it, for example, let's say start with definition of the security controls, making sure that your identity is security, making sure your network is secure. You need to do that. So that is a concept. Zero trust is a concept where you assume breach. So it means every single one of those layers, infrastructure, data, app, end user, in this case, Office 365, for example, that you have that in place. What Microsoft solutions have tools to help you enable that. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, Alessandro, thank you so much.
Yeah, so this is one of the secure posture that it talks about. This is actually a good thing when we go with the concept of zero trust, for example, and we enable Microsoft Defender for Cloud to check the security posture. One of the things that I show to my customers when I'm deploying a greenfield, for example, it's showing the security here as 99-100%. It's very hard. Trust me, it's very hard to get this to 100%. But my point to customers is this: getting to 200% on a greenfield, it may be hard, not impossible, but no point of having 100% on day one if in day two people try to breach that and try to do things to break, and that security score will go down. It's always ongoing. Remember, security is not about deploying there and forgetting. It's ongoing. So this is just some of the. I'll leave the PowerPoint for you to look later. It's just some of the screen showing secure posture, workload protection. One thing very important about Defender as well is not just about showing what's going on, but also about protection. Defender for Cloud has protections to some workloads like storage, database, Kubernetes. Very important to make sure that those are in place as well. And then what I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the integration with Purview. We were only talking about infrastructure. Now, the most important thing and the most target thing that exists is data. So we need to make sure that we protect our data, right? So protecting the data and using solutions like Purview, for example, that can help with that layer. Very important. I showed that screen already. Protection workloads, which I just mentioned. Make sure that you implement this, especially around containers, SQL storage. Everything that has data is a very important asset. And you just saw when I started this presentation, how much does it cost to hire someone to try and breach, which is nothing, right? And as I mentioned when I started, the last slide, which is that strategy, right? Very important, make sure that all teams are aligned. No point of having everyone in your organization or in your customer thinking a different strategy or thinking different. If you don't bring them together, if everyone is not working towards a single strategy, then it will definitely generate shadow IT. And I've seen that so much where security wants to enforce some controls, developers can't do anything. They go to the business allow them to bypass security, then it creates shadow IT. It means different strategy. Security has one strategy, developer has a different strategy, business has a different strategy. No one is going anywhere. It actually does open doors for hackers. So please make sure single strategy. I think if there is something that can leave on my session today is that single strategy. I think that is the most important thing, because if you have a single strategy, you can achieve everything else. So if there is nothing else, no questions, thank you for attending this session. I hope you're enjoying the Cloud Security Summit.
We have 4 more minutes. If you have any questions, kindly unmute and ask.
I have one question. What about cost? I mean, I love the security that Microsoft offers, but my concern has always been the cost. I mean, some of the stuff you showed, like there's a higher cost to it. So just can you address that?
That's a good point. Cost is always on top of mind of everyone, right? And unfortunately, security is seen as a, how can I say this, not an investment, but also as an expenditure, which is bad. I can't unfortunately compare costs from between Microsoft and other third-party tools. But what I can tell you is that actually the cost between Microsoft tools and third-party tools, they're actually pretty much on par if we get to the same level of features. Yes, the thing that you need to do is make conscious decisions. One thing I can tell you that I've seen a lot happening, it's like we had the old days with Microsoft SCORM, which people deploy a solution and enable everything. Well, that's a problem because sometimes you enable everything and you don't have that everything, or you don't even have people to look at everything. So you're paying too much for something that you're not taking advantage. So again, it comes down to the strategy. When you create your strategy, you create your security controls, you need to understand what you are creating the security controls for, and then enable steps at a time. Once you enable the monitoring for that tool. And the other thing that not everyone look at this is when you deploy one Microsoft solution tool, like say Defender, for example, or Sentinel or Log Analytics, there are some ways of actually saving money, you bundle some of those solutions. Again, I'm not a Microsoft license expert here, but I definitely know that there are a lot of things that can be done to reduce costs. Sorry, that's as much as I could answer in terms of cost.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there is nothing else, I think we have a next session starting in about 1 minute.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Thanks for this session.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alessandro.
Thank you.